Joining us now is Director for Indigenous Programs at the Centre for Independent Studies, Warren Mundine. Warren, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure to catch up to you two.
Former Labor Senator Pat Dodson recently described the current levels of Indigenous youth incarceration and out-of-home care as a genocide. But does holding people accountable for their actions and removing children from unsafe home environments really qualify as a genocide?
Here we are, we've got serious youth crime across Australia. We've just had the CLP elected in Northern Territory because of that crime issues. We've had the NLP in Queensland elected because of these serious issues of crime, and we're seeing it across this country. And what's he come up with the solution? An emotional, this is genocide. You know who a lot of people who are suffering under these crimes? It is Aboriginal women, it is Aboriginal communities, and these are the problems that happen. You know, they need to start coming up with some serious solutions to these things. I happen to be working on programs. I did things with the Malanakas government in South Australia and other governments about how do we divert young people from committing crimes. How do we get them into jobs, education? We start getting them and dealing with these areas and taking responsibility for their actions, and that's what we need to do. I get sick and tired of people who just make up words and talk nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, another suggestion by Pat Dodson is that the Albanese government should use their massive election victory to keep pushing forward with the principles of the Makarrata, which included the voice. That, of course, was defeated at the referendum. But now Pat Dodson says Labor should push on anyway. Let's establish a truth-telling committee in this country. So I've got to ask you, Warren, would a truth-telling committee help Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to come together? That is the point of reconciliation, is it not?
Like he's talking about a huge win by the Labor government. The no vote was almost twice the size of what the Albanese government got in this election. So let's get back to the reality. The reality is none of these things will ever fix anything and the problems within Aboriginal and the rest of Australia. We have to come up with some serious stuff. And there are some great stuff that are happening out there, you know. So let's talk about them. Let's work on those instead of just talking about all this nonsense all the time, which has been so strongly rejected, not only by the wider Australian community, but by Aboriginal people at all.
Yeah, you're so right. So the new shadow spokesperson for Indigenous Affairs, Karen Little, has said that we need to stop associating the word Aboriginal with disadvantage because it erases all the positive success stories of Aboriginal Australians. Now, you are a successful person in your own right, regardless of your heritage. And you really are. And so I just think, does that constantly just assuming if someone's Indigenous, they must be disadvantaged? Does it create this culture of victimhood, and how does it make you feel as someone who is successful in your own right? I sat
at a conference once and it talked about health problems in Aboriginals. It talked about crime in Aboriginals. It talked about unemployment in Aboriginals. And I'm a very positive person. By the end of that conference, I sat down and said, God, I must be one of the most miserable people on the planet. My wife may agree with that. But this is what we're doing. We're doing two things. One, we're not recognising incredible success of what's happening. You look at the Indigenous business and economic program. It's gone from a 6.7 million program to 8.2 billion. 40,000 jobs for not only for Aboriginal people, 25,000 for Aboriginal people, but 20,000 for other people who in Australia who are working for Aboriginal businesses. You're getting all these success things. The people who are going to universities, the people who are completing school. All these are great things that were happening at the moment. And I don't know any footy team win a grand final that doesn't work from positivity. If we keep talking about negative stuff, then we'll always end up with negative stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you're continually told you're disadvantaged, eventually you start to believe that, and so you start to act that out, and the disadvantage is just perpetuated. I want to ask you about something that's happened in New Zealand, Warren. A Maori artist has placed a New Zealand flag on the ground with the words, "Please walk on me," printed over it. Now, it's been removed from the gallery in Nelson because the gallery was concerned by the rising tensions it was provoking. Surprise, surprise. Was the gallery right to remove that display by the Maori artist, or should artistic freedom reign?
Oh, look, we all love a bit of artistic freedom and that, you know, but you've got to realise, like the Voice campaign in Australia, New Zealand actually voted on their flag. And guess what happened? The vast majority of New Zealanders, Maori and Pākehā, all supported the flag. So look, this is just again just some this nonsense that goes on in regard to this is not going to fix race relations in New Zealand. It's not going to help Maoris or Pākehā people. It is just some artists just having a brain explosion.
Indeed, Warren Mundine, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.